Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on Thor Explorations. Thor Explorations is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker THX, on the London Exchange under the same ticker THX, and on the OTC markets under the ticker THXPF. And I'm joined today with the president and CEO of Thor Explorations, Segun Lawson. And Segun, always great to get you on the show. We were talking off mic. It's been a while since we've had you on the KE report, so nice to get an update here. And just for people listening in, just as a reminder, this company is operating in three different jurisdictions in West Africa, in Nigeria, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire. Definitely looking at expanding operations for production, development, and exploration. The company is operating the Segilola mine in Nigeria. It has the development stage Douta project in Senegal, as well as some recent acquisition of claims that we'll talk about in this discussion. And then two exciting new exploration projects in Cote d'Ivoire, the Guitry and Marahui projects. So a lot to get into as far as all three areas. And I guess for today, Segun, let's kick it off with the Q3 operations and financials. You put out some news to the marketplace just on the 17th of November, and it really highlights the third quarter. The company is humming right along, lots of revenue, lots of profits, but I'll let you dig in and get under the hood with us here. Give us the key metrics you want investors to know about how things went operationally and financially in Q3.
Hi, Shad. Thanks for having me on again. You're right, it has been a while. It's been pretty busy, but I'm, as always, really glad to be here giving an update. So, yeah, starting off with our Q3 results, it was another solid quarter for us. We continue to produce as per our guidance, and we did this whilst staying disciplined with our costs. We produced just over 22,500 ounces. And if you think, historically and traditionally, Q3 has always been our weakest quarter, particularly there are extremely heavy rains and it's a bit more difficult to operate. And so, achieving this as our in the period was extremely encouraging for us. So out of the 22,500 ounces we poured, we sold 19,650 ounces at an average price of just over $3,500 per ounce, so $3,535 per ounce, which resulted in revenues of just under $70 million compared to the same period last year of just over $40 million. And our net profit for the 3 months was $43.1 million. So our cash position grew. We finished the quarter with $81 million cash in the account, and the balance sheet continues to go. So we've had a complete inflection in terms of our financial position. If you look at the end of Q3 last year, our net cash position was minus $27.8 million. So it was $27.8 million in net debt. And we have a working capital surplus of $96.6 million. So we were extremely encouraged by that. And I think there's one thing to highlight here was that we didn't sell all our ounces in that quarter. We carried around about 4,000 ounces over into Q4. And these ounces were sold above $4,000 per ounce, so over $500 more than the Q3 average. So we were very pleased with that. And gold has sort of averaged above $4,100 so far this quarter, and we're encouraged that we continue to sell our gold above that $4,100 price. So those were the financial highlights. In terms of operating, things went according to plan. We moved in terms of total material mined, we're beginning to move less material. And that's really a function of being in the southern end of the pit now and working in a much narrower space and having a lower strip. And we managed to maintain a head grade of 3.11 grams per ton. But notably this quarter, which has been a trend over the last 5 quarters, our recovery rate had another uptick and was just over 94%, 94.3% recovered. So we're very happy with that. And if we can continue to maintain these levels of recovery over the next 3-4 quarters, it's going to put us in a very, very strong position. And lastly, in terms of production, we added a bit more to our stockpile. We added about 3,000 ounces to the stockpile, which now sits just over 44,000 ounces. So if you think about it. We have been, over the course of the mining, been putting sub 1 gram material to the stockpile. And this is now growing to a position where we have over 1 year's worth of processing material on the stockpile. We have 1.65 million tons of ore stockpile there, grading at 0.83 grams per ton for 44,000 ounces of gold, which, if we were to use a headline figure of $4,000 per ounce, would be over $170 million of cash. So we think we're in a very financially healthy position. Like we fully repaid our senior debt at the end of last year. We've been growing our balance sheet. One thing I probably haven't stressed enough is that the stream that was attached to the financing has now fallen away as well. So we're very well positioned for a very robust final quarter of the year financially.
Well, Segun, that's a great report card. I mean, if you think about like what you said with some of the carryover in ounces that you sold in Q4 and those margins expansion from, let's just say, a little over 3,500 to over 4,000, that's a big deal. It's a big deal for every producing company, but it's even more impactful when you're debt free, when you don't have the stream on there anymore, and when you're getting such good head grade. Over 3 grams per ton gold in an open pit is amazing, and it's one of the higher grade open pits on the planet. And to get a recovery rate of over 94% is fantastic. As far as the all-in sustaining cost, it looks like you were at 1129 per ounce. Do you anticipate all-in sustaining cost staying around that level for Q4? Any change to costs?
We actually expect a drop in all-in sustaining cost in Q4, so the average for the year will remain below 1,000. The Q3 number crept above $1,000 per ounce as a function of two things. Number one was we blended some lower grade material, which is high cost, to keep that head grade around about just under 3.2 grams per ton. And secondly, the all-in sustaining cost is calculated on gold sold, not gold poured. So the ounces we took into Q4 to sell, and we didn't sell in Q3, the cost of mining those out were not allocated to any ounces and were allocated to the 19,650 ounces that were sold in Q3, hence the higher cost. So, yeah, look, we expect that cost to go down. There's nothing different in Q4 that we expect a continued rise in price. Our main inputs in terms of the costs continue to be ammonium nitrate, diesel, and compressed natural gas, and those costs have remained stable.
Well, Segun, just hats off to your operations team because that's one of the lowest all-in sustaining cost of any gold producer that we've talked to. And when you look at the majors, they're up between $1,200 to $1,600 all-in sustaining cost. So even keeping it at 1,000 and below is pretty amazing. Let's talk about how you continue to grow Segilola, though, because you are still involved with the aggressive ongoing exploration, and you have been for the last few years. But you're now testing some of the depth underneath the pit and looking at some of those ounces, as well as always looking for satellite deposits near surface. Give us an exploration update at Segilola.
Sure. The drilling has been ongoing underneath the pit since, we started this year. And we have obviously, starting at the beginning of the year and sort of towards the end of last year, there was a lot more testing of various theories and hypotheses as to what was controlling the gold. We carried out various studies, but now we believe, we have a much better understanding. We've opened up the pit. We've gained significant confidence in what we're doing and what we're targeting. We initially kicked off the program with a 40 by 40 spacing in the mineralized area to increase our confidence, and I would deem those results as a success to date. Intersecting the gold where we anticipated we would. We've also carried out petrography studies to try and understand the different origins of the gold, and that's been extremely helpful in our deeper targeting. Now, that deeper targeting has required a redesign of a step-out program, which is, it's an 80 meter by 80 meter spacing. And, we're now drilling some of the deepest holes we've ever drilled here. I would say the most encouraging thing about this is that we continue to intersect wide mineralized high-grade intersections that are mineable underneath the pit. And, this is also guiding the evolution of the design of this drill program. We've done this to the south of the pit. We found shallow dipping mineralization to the south and a very steeply dipping chute in the north. And yeah, we will continue to update the market here. We purchased some of our own drilling rigs, a couple of RC and diamond rigs, and that's really enabled us to step up the rate at which we're drilling here. And we're looking forward to getting these results. Unfortunately, kicking off this deeper drilling with our own rigs in the hardest time of the year, in the rainy season, isn't quite ideal. We'd have loved to do it in the dry season, but now we're in the dry season. We've drilled a few holes. We will, every time we get a significant batch of results, we will do another press release. We have 8 months ahead of us of dry conditions, which we're very excited about to continue to target these deep holes. And this is all going to culminate into updating of the resource. Now, we won't draw a line with the first update, but we will update the resource this year and release the resource in Q1 next year. And then the plan is to continue growing from there. That'll be a base from which to grow from. So, should things continue as they are, we would very much be looking at trying to put a decline in from the bottom of the pit at some point next year, and which will enable us to explore from underground as well. But it would also enable us to start mining some of this mineralization that's immediately underneath the pit. One more thing we're doing in this regard is, the gold price at the beginning of this year, should I say, was $2,600 versus where we are now. So there is scope to deepen the pit more without a huge pushback. And there's also scope to push back, some waste material and see how much if it's optimal to continue to deepen the pit prior to transitioning to an underground mine. So that study's going on as well at a $4,000 gold price. So either way, I think the messaging here is that we continue to find more mineralization. We are encouraged. We are doing a step out program now to see if we can get that step up in ounces underneath the pit. And we look forward to providing an updated resource in Q1 next year.
All right. Well, you covered a lot there. I was glad that you went into that because I was going to ask if you were going to do an update to the resource after all this drilling. So you are. And then you're still looking at different options as far as potentially deepening the pit a little bit more, but also looking at putting in that decline. And yeah, drilling from underground, especially if you own your own drill rigs, a lot better cost for the drilling that way. But the key message is you're adding more ounces at Segilola, continuing to grow the future mine life of the project, and you're finding more gold. So that's the key takeaway for investors here. Let's pivot over to the next jurisdiction, Senegal, and talk about the Douta project. You put out some big news back in September, and it's nice to finally unpack this with you, Segun. And this is that you now have 100% interest in your Douta project before you previously had 70%. And in the process of this transaction, you also picked up a contiguous land package, the Busankoba project, which is basically going to be absorbed into the larger Douta project. So give us a good update in Senegal as far as this is going to be mine number 2. It's a big development project. You've done a lot of drilling here. You've got resources, you've got economic studies, and you are working on a PFS. So give us a holistic update from Senegal.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Douta project consists now of 2 licenses, the Douta and the Douta West license. Our existing resource of 1.78 million ounces was in the Douta license, which we own 70% of. We increased our stake in that to 100%. So we bought out our JV partner in exchange for $3 million cash and royalty, 1.5% NSR. So, for us, that was the obvious thing to do. This is a project we're very excited to be developing and looking to go into construction next year. And owning 100% of this license with contain the whole resource gives us full autonomy and flexibility and ability to move quickly and entrepreneurially, should I say, on any decisions we need in terms of in the development process. And economically, it was a no-brainer. We getting an additional 30% of, let's say, close to 1 million ounces if we use the indicated portion for less than $3 million cash up front. So, we're very excited by that. We also have in the Douta West license, the Baraka discovery. And, we believe that will continue to grow. In fact, we've started drilling there as well I speak now. So we're very excited by that. And like you rightly say, we've been pushing this, for quite a while now. And the next major milestone is the preliminary feasibility study, which we've promised to deliver this year. So it's just a matter of weeks away now. And that's shaping up to be very encouraging as well. So we look forward to releasing those results out, and I look forward to talking those results out in detail. But I think this is finally going to have some project economics associated with it, this project. And it's a project that, we've been working alongside our real contractors with over the last 12, 18 months. So it's given us that confidence that, we can start making some very important investment decisions from as early as the preliminary feasibility study stage in terms of the quotes for the long lead items. So that's something we're also very encouraged about and looking forward to pushing ahead. The permitting process has been ongoing as well, and we expect that should be fully wrapped up, in the first half of next year. What I will say about this project is that, we will have a PFS with a projected mine plan and resource inventory. However, like you rightly say, we've added a new license to this, the lies contiguous, and provides significant opportunity for upside. It has over 30 kilometers of undrilled soil geochemistry anomalism, where only a small portion has been drilled and has, some trenches in it. So we're very excited. We think even after the PFS over the next 8 months while we're drilling in the Douta West area and in Busankhoba, we can continue to increase the resource inventory there. So that by the time when we pour first gold in Senegal, this project would be even larger than what we declare in the preliminary feasibility study. So yeah, this is it's a great project for us. It moves us from being a single mine, single jurisdiction producer to what will hopefully be our second mine in another jurisdiction. And it also has, significant ground for exploration and upside through exploration.
Yeah, Shagun, it's pretty exciting because you're finally getting to the point here where with the PFS coming out this next year, and like you say, starting to look at or ordering some of those early lead items, it's going to be exciting to see the development process begin and construction begin. Now, what has to happen between putting out the PFS and actually what is the build time estimate? I mean, I know that's going to be outlined in the PFS, but just a rough idea for people listening. What kind of a timeline would it be between the economic studies and first pour?
Look, I'll just give a back of the envelope timeline that we would hope to be pouring gold commercially in Q1 2028. We are aiming for that. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good estimate, just to give people a rough idea of what to expect. So about a 2-year process from next year when you do the economic studies to first pour, and a lot of de-risking and all kinds of work going on in between then and there. And like you say, the exploration side, just a follow up on the exploration. So the Baraka 3 target is one that you've put a lot of interest in. Maybe unpack for people why that's so germane and why that has so much growth potential.
Yes, we've only tested a small portion of that license, a small strike length. It's high grade, wide mineralization that comes up to surface, easy to mine. And, one of the work streams that we've been working very hard at in this preliminary feasibility study is getting the correct process flow sheet for the deeper fresh material. So about Baraka 3 coming up to surface and adding to the oxide and transition, which we expect will have no issues with the recovery, then becomes very important in terms of the mine plan.
Well, and Shagun, we've been following the company for many years now, I think 4 or 5 years. And originally, Douta itself was exciting. And then you kept adding from Makossa Main to the tail, the Makossa tail, all these different parts of the project. You had other sections along there, along this huge strike length. And then you added Douta West. And now you've added Busankhoba. So just maybe a little more color on Busankhoba, which is adjacent to the project and will be absorbed into the larger Douta project.
Yeah, I think the Douta project will continue to evolve. Like you rightly say, it started off with one license. In fact, we put the first drill hole into what was a grassroots piece of ground. So we've made that discovery. We've seen it grow from a maiden resource to where it is now. Now through to the preliminary feasibility study, we're consolidating our land package. We've added Douta West. The entire western area of west of Baraka 3 hasn't been drilled. There are a number of anomalies there. And then looking at Busan Koba, you think of what we've managed to discover in Douta over the last, let's say, even 5 years, and you extrapolate that to the Busan Koba that's got over 30 kilometers of anomalism, we're extremely encouraged by the growth prospects in Busan Koba and the ounces that can potentially add to the Douta project. So it will evolve into a bigger Douta project that we think that Busan Koba license will be absorbed by Douta, and it has potential to add years and years of feed to the whatever plants that we build there at Douta.
All right, so a lot of exploration upside still in Senegal, way beyond what you'll be putting out in the PFS. So people just need to remember that'll just be a snapshot in time, and then still a lot of expansion potential at the overall land package and project. And we're not done yet with exploration. Let's shift over to jurisdiction number three, Cote d'Ivoire. You have two main exploration projects on the go there, and a lot of people say producers are boring companies, but I find that producers often are the best explorers because they're looking to feed the beast, they're looking to expand, and they have the money to do so. With the margins we talked about and the revenues being generated by the company, you have the organic funds to be able to grow the footprint of all of your pipeline of projects. And Cote d'Ivoire is kind of that exciting front end sizzle for the company. You've got two projects here, the Guitry project and the Marahui project. Maybe give us some updates on some of the drill results you've been putting out in Cote d'Ivoire.
Yeah, we actually have three projects, but we've prioritized two at the moment, Guitry and Marahui. Guitry, we own 100%. We purchased that off Endeavor. This license was characterized by this areas of significant soil anomalism. It was 8 kilometers long by 5 kilometers wide, and only a tiny portion had been tested from drilling. And that drilling had only intersected mineralization in the laterite cover and in the oxide. So, we believe there was significant upside potential. We carried out a drill program which finished earlier this year. We completed 4,600 meters of drilling, and I would say that drilling was a success. We delineated six mineralized lenses of strike length in this small area. These remain open along strike and at depth. But if you look bigger picture in Guitry, this is only, I would say, less than 15% of the mineralized area identified in the soils. So to hit what I would probably define as a discovery and so well constrained and which remains open in such a small portion of this drilling target area is extremely encouraging. And we've gone back now and we're doing two things. We're trying to grow the area we've drilled by continuing to test it at depth, but we're also testing the other areas of anomalism that have similar signatures at surface. So I think it's going to be a very exciting 8 months at Guitry. We're drilling constantly. Like you say, one of the joys of producing cash in Nigeria is that we are self-funded. Certainly remember the days where we were doing pretty much 90% of my job was fundraising for exploration. We're self-funded. We're able to move more aggressively, and we're able to do this in a much quicker fashion than we had without stopping to fundraise and so on. So the next 8 months extremely exciting in Cote d'Ivoire at Guitry, and we were aiming to push out a maiden resource by the end of this year. However, the extended rainy season came into play, plus there were presidential elections in Cote d'Ivoire where everything stopped. So we've now pushed that into next year. But either way, we will be updating the market with our drill results as we receive them. In particular, when we move to the new area, I think the market should be certainly on standby because that would certainly start showing this project has significant scale. Our second project in Cote d'Ivoire is the Marahui project. At the end of Q3 last year, we hadn't drilled it, but we are extremely encouraged by this license. We think this is a license that has shown all the right signs for an early stage exploration project. It's the right geology, it's the right rocks, the right structural controls. We have several soil anomalies across this. However, our priority target, the ECRA target, delineated a 5 kilometer soil anomaly, which has been further confirmed with rock chip bedrock in situ anomalism of super high grades, going up to 29.9 grams per ton, and a significant number of them above 10 grams per ton and 28 grams. This is for the entire 5 kilometer strike length. In Q3, I think the biggest win here was finding a parallel structure, which is smaller, 3 kilometers long, but also grading very high in the soils and in the bedrock as well. This is one, as a company, we're super excited to be drilling. And like I mentioned in Guitry and in Senegal and in Nigeria, we're going to be drilling this from now through to the rainy season in July. So, and we have the ability to do that with multiple rigs should the first set of results come out encouraging. So, we could be sitting here in, 8, 9 months' time with multiple resources in Cote d'Ivoire. And I think that would be a good problem to have, which to allocate more resources to, or perhaps we do both. Like we've seen in Nigeria and Segilola, we don't necessarily have to find an elephant, 3, 4 million ounces to generate a lot of cash. But either way, it will be a good problem to have if we are there. At the moment, we're just focusing on getting the drilling going and drilling these out and getting to the next milestone, which is a maiden resource.
Well, it's pretty exciting, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens over the next 8, 9 months in the dry season before the next rainy season in July. All three projects, you got build drill programs underway. You've got key milestones and catalysts coming up on all three projects, from resource updates to economic studies to getting down under the pit at Segilola. There's so much going on with the company. So, for those of you listening in, if you want to follow along with all this news, definitely click on the link below down in the show notes. It takes you right over to the Thor Explorations website, straight to their news section, where you can sign up for updates that hit your email inbox, or just follow along with all the news as it drops. There's going to be a lot of drilling news, but a lot of other development and catalyst news. So definitely going to be a full year to follow along with. And Segun, it's always great to have you on the show. Let's try to get you on a little sooner next time so we don't have to unpack so much in one discussion. But this was a great one to really give people an overview of the company. And as always, just looking forward to our next conversation.
Awesome. Thank you very much.